So right now we're in our suspension rebuild / R&D room. We have James Houghton's coilovers. We originally built these in 2022 actually. So they've had a lot of race miles on them. TSX actually isn't being used as much anymore this year since we've started campaigning the TCR. So we decided over this winter we're gonna rebuild and refresh the suspension. I thought it'd be a great video to shoot and kind of follow along the process. So James dropped them off last night for us. The only thing we've currently done is just given them a wash down because they've seen a lot of miles, a lot of dirt, a lot of use, just a little easier and less gross to maintain as we disassemble them. We'll start with a shock dyno to see where they're at currently. Then we'll disassemble and we're just gonna give them a refresh today. We'll do a full inspection while we're at it. See if they need anything. We don't expect them to need anything. They're not currently leaking. They don't have any problems. We just think they would just be good for a fresh oil and seals and a refresh before being sent back out. We've had them on since 2022, so that's a lot of GLTC races on the TSX, a lot of miles, a lot of wins. Currently he runs our CD1 valve inside these. Back in 2022, we've gone through a few revisions for him as he originally was testing them, and now it's a coilover and a valve that we use on any other car. Like my car currently has a revamped version of the valve that's used inside here because of James's testing. All right, so we're gonna start with just disassembling the strut. You just wanna get it taken apart so we can shock dyno it. So we have a 19mm nut on the top we're gonna take off. And we have our bin here to catch all our stuff so we don't lose anything. So he has a spherical bearing in our K2s by default. We typically don't use them in a street coilover, but in a race coilover it is pretty important. We'll give that a wipe down and a clean after. So we will start by checking the shaft here, see if there's any damage to it. Typically if there is damage, there's usually leaking that goes along with it. This shaft is micro polished and any nicks can cause a leak. So typically if you get damage on it, it's noticed right away. And that's why it's really important to keep the boot on. So we will, before we dyno it, we'll measure and make note of where everything is. So James currently has a 8 for rebound and a 7 for compression. This is our Penske shock dyno. We're gonna get his suspension set up. We're gonna compare it to what he had previously when they were new in 2022. See how much they've changed in the 3 years of racing he's done. And then we're gonna try to get him as close to that as possible, get him back to there. Let's get it hooked up to the shock dyno. We're gonna tighten our lower mount at the bottom. We're gonna compress the shock a little bit to make sure it doesn't bottom out during our test. And then just make sure everything is tight. This is our infrared sensor basically, and it's gonna measure shock temp. So we want it measured pointing at the actual threaded shock body itself to get oil temp as we run our test. Just starting speed test now. So this is velocity and force. So how fast it's moving and then how much force it's taking to move it. So the top here we have is compression and this is rebound. And this is kind of our transition point between low and high speed compression, where this is typically like driver input, like steering changes. And the high speed compression is usually more about things on track, curbs, and as the car moves the strut is the second part of it. Just looking at our original dyno graph, honestly, the rears look really good right now. So we finished dynoing the strut, everything looked great. We're gonna take it off and start a disassembly and a refresh for it. And just check if there's any issues or anything during that process. Put everything down to 0, our rebound and our compression, just so our valves are fully open. Start by taking the nitrogen out of this. It's pressurized. Take off our top hat, a little cap. So with the nitrogen out, we can push the top seal down so we can get to the snap ring. The snap ring actually holds the seal in. So just gonna look it over. So this is our seal, our top hat seal basically. When you have a strut leak, usually it's either that seal there or one of these two. That's why we use a double seal, just to give it a better chance of staying. This is our piston with the oil wiper. There's your shim stack and everything else that goes with it. The shim stack's really like how we'll fine tune suspension for each application. The piston itself would be the same kind of piston that is used in my car, for example, with the McPherson. But the shim stacks we will use will be very different on one another. It's like your piston rings kind of seals as the piston moves up and down. And you don't want to see any damage or any marks on this little like bluish ring. And any marks there kind of indicate like damage to the bore. We will check the bore of the cylinder itself after. But this looking this good is awesome. Oil looks honestly awesome. I think it actually relates exactly to how the dyno graph looked, and it looked like a great dyno graph. Oil looks in super condition. What we're gonna do next is actually check our floater valve. So inside the lower mount in the nitrogen chamber, basically, there's a floater valve that will decide how much nitrogen the coilover has. Another specialty tool for this guy. It is very dry inside, so no oil is leaking into the nitrogen chamber, and we had nitrogen when we disassembled them, so we shouldn't have any questions about it. If we were low on nitrogen, we did do a pressure test on the dyno, and if we were low on nitrogen, it would have indicated it there. And if the nitrogen and oil were mixing, you also would have seen it on the graph itself, so it doesn't hurt to just pull that cap off and just check the depth. No damage to the bore, looks awesome. Everything looks really clean inside. So we're just gonna start filling it back up. So this is our oil for the suspension. It is from Japan, actually, we order this stuff. We've had very good luck with it. It seems to last really well and respond really well to especially on our race stuff. Yeah, we're gonna take off the seal. It wasn't leaking. We've just taken it apart and we kind of introduced an issue. So now it's time to take it off and just replace it while we're at it. This is our new top cap seal. Basically, it's our 2 external and a wiper inside. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna put it back in. Our valve is fully open. So our valve inside should bleed as much oil through as possible. And basically we're gonna put our valve in and let it slowly seep through and just make sure no air gets caught underneath it, because we do have quite a few spots you could have air caught. And as we do that, basically we're just gonna watch it and then just make sure and top up the oil as we need. A little messy this part, but it's crucial to get all the air out. And once we're happy we have no new bubbles forming, top up the oil and put the cap on. Right now we have a couple bubbles still forming. Okay. It's a little messy here, but I prefer to make a big mess and then just make sure no air is trapped inside as we overfill with oil. Wipe all this down, this is so much oil. Get our snap ring in there. Top cap holds everything together and then just seats against the snap ring. That's it. We'll put nitrogen in it and we'll put it back on the dyno. All right, so we're back here by the NSX to fill up the struts with nitrogen. We use nitrogen because it's a better, more stable gas. There's no air in it. It will compress better and it will be a better result overall. The nitrogen tank currently back here because we use it for the air jacks in the NSX. It actually lifts the cars up. We have our Schrader valve connected, hose on. All right, so our last step after this will be to take them back to the dyno and just compare them to our original results and just make sure they're within spec and where we want them to be. Fresh from nitrogen, back on the dyno. It will tell us if we have made any mistakes during the rebuilds. If there's air trapped in it, if oil's not right, or nitrogen pressure is off, just give us an idea of the general life of the coilover. All right, so our green line is our original used rear. And our red line is the retest we just did now. It's kind of what we want to see is we're very close to where we were previously. It looks good, looks ready to go. Ready to have James put it to the test. Now that we're done the dyno, everything went great. Rebuild's been perfect. We have 0 issues with it. We're just gonna do final assembly, which is get like the bump stop back on, springs, top hat, everything. We typically try not to touch lower collars if you don't have to, especially in a two-way, it's kind of convenient, we don't have to. It just keeps ride height, everything the same. Spring perch we'll try to keep in the same spot. So everything just goes back together, super easy, quick and efficient. So we have our bump stop on, dust boot, our snap ring. So we're gonna put on our collar for our Swift spring next. Our Swift spring, which is spring of choice for our K2s. We have found the Swift spring overall is just a really great spring for racing. It seems to maintain a spring rate longer and better and more consistent lap after lap. A little union that's going to connect our 2 springs together because we have a helper spring that'll go on top that connects it. We have our forced collar there, which will sit inside our bearing. Top hat goes on, and 19mm nut. There you go. Assembled, ready. My preference is to put the helper spring on the top. It doesn't really make a difference, but the collar interferes less with the boot. So this one's done. We're gonna repeat the process 3 more times. We're gonna do the dyno, check everything, and then we'll assemble, get them back over to James so you can take them to Mosport for a test before winter. So this is just the general process for refreshing your K2s. Typically you'll do it over the winter. If you have any questions about it, feel free to email us and we can set up an appointment to have yours sent in or dropped off and rebuilt.